Colonel Douglas McGregor explains what's really going on in Ukraine. This was Trump's military advisor.
Or in Ukraine, which is happening there, and what is the end game?
Well, for the globalists that are running the show, this is the globalist neocon elite, and both on the Hill as well as in the White House, and these elites in Europe, particularly in Paris, Berlin, London, they're all interested in seeing BlackRock take over Ukraine, number one, so that it can be systematically stripped of its resources and turned into a subjugated state that belongs to the larger globalist elites. But they also want to see that happen to Russia, which is why this war was never about Ukraine. It was always about what can be done to destroy Russia. And of course, since the people in charge didn't perform any strategic analysis, they never thought about purpose, method, or end state, they concluded that Russia today is still the Russia of 1992. It's weak. It's prostrate. Its economy is ineffective. Remember the McCain statement? Oh, Russia is Spain with a gas station. All of these arrogant displays of American hubris, treating Russia as though it was a third-class nation with a fourth-class military. Well, we're getting an education right now. We paid no attention to the Russians who had legitimate concerns about what we were doing in eastern Ukraine. We were building an army to attack them. We put a hostile government into that country in 2014. And we kept telling them that it made no difference to us what they thought or what they cared about. They said, we don't want NATO on our border. No one paid attention. President Trump tried to listen, but he was surrounded by people who subverted him. People who were not loyal to the president, who took an oath of obedience to the orders of the president and then ignored them. So what's the outcome? You've got a very serious war that could become regional, even global. And no one in the White House seems to really grasp that. But we're losing. The globalists are losing. And when the ground dries and in June you're going to see a massive Russian offensive, and most of what we call this thing called Ukraine is going to be swept away, especially that government in Kiev. But that government doesn't represent the interests of the Ukrainian people. They represent the interests of this globalist elite who are interested in resources and stripping them and using them and exploiting them to make money.
Yeah, it feels like, the biggest threat to America is actually what's happened to the petrodollar. When you have Putin now talking with the Saudis and Putin now talking with Xi, and you get rid of the petrodollar, and all of a sudden all that borrowing that we do, where we're living way above our means, that's no longer possible, plausible, or worse.
I think what you're seeing is this war has become financial as well as military. And the globalists understand that they're going to lose this war. And what will come of this is that the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are going to be increased by 81 additional members. And all of these people are going to go to a currency that is backed by gold. And once they go to that currency backed by gold, whether it is one currency or a basket of currencies, it doesn't make any difference. Yes, we are in a lot of trouble. The globalists know that, and it is why they are so desperate right now. And the greatest fear that I have is that when the Russians do attack and it becomes abundantly clear that Ukraine is finished, I mean, it's already obvious to anybody who visits the place for any length of time, it's in ruins. But once that occurs, I fear that there will be pressure to commit U.S. forces in Poland and Romania, along with Polish forces and potentially Romanian ones, to Western Ukraine. And if that occurs, the gloves will come off, because truthfully, thus far, Putin has exercised tremendous restraint, tremendous patience. He does not want a war with the West. If he wanted that, we'd already have it. But if we intervene in Western Ukraine, it's over. We'll be in a full-fledged war.
Expand on that a little bit, because it's sort of interesting.
I think we've grossly miscalculated. Putin had made several speeches over the last 20 years, repeatedly saying, please do not advance the border to Russia. Do not try to transform Ukraine into a hostile actor, an actor with hostile intentions towards Russia. What happens in Ukraine is of existential strategic interest to us, just as theoretically what happens in Mexico is of existential strategic interest to us, although this administration has decided to ignore it. He expected that we would negotiate, that he would demonstrate that this was serious and that Russia wanted its population in eastern Ukraine, which is really Russian, to have equal rights before the law. He wanted to end the oppression of the Russians that lived there. And he wasn't going to surrender Crimea. The reason he went into Crimea is he was afraid it was going to be turned into a U.S. naval base. Biden said, our goal is regime change. Our goal is to get rid of Putin. And our goal is ultimately to divide Russia into constituent parts, then exploit it. All of his supporters, his staffers, everyone in the globalist camp knows this is the truth. The so-called oligarchs, Kolomoisky, Soros, and others are all part of this. None of this is news. Finally, he said, enough's enough. He stopped. They set up a strategic defense. They ran an economy of force mission. And now they have a force in place that can go as far as it needs to go, which includes to the Polish border. They have a plan for a 31-month war against us if we insist on fighting it. And we are in no shape to fight a war. We can't even recruit the United States Army or the Marines. The Marines are running around trying to recruit illegals and are being encouraged to do so by the administration. Is that what you want in the ground force to fight for this country? Forget it. It's not going to work.
So that's it. It's about the petrodollar and BlackRock and stealing the resources of Ukraine, just like Hitler did, to take the resources of Ukraine for living space and steal their resources.